What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones, and AJ, we're here for an exciting edition of the THI podcast as we're here to talk about Carolina's newly released 2024 football schedule that came out just a couple of hours ago on Wednesday evening. So I'm going to pop a graphic on screen right now, and I'll run through the schedule real quick before we dive into the non-conference games and then follow that up with the ACC games the rest of the way. It starts on August 29th at Minnesota, Thursday night matchup. Next game, home game against Charlotte on September 7th, followed by NC Central on September 14th. Carolina hosts James Madison on September 21st. ACC play starts at Duke on September 28th and is followed by a home game against Pittsburgh on October 5th. Skipping ahead a little bit, October 12th matchup at home with Georgia Tech, then followed by a bye week. And then Carolina goes to UVA on October 26th. That's followed by a tough road matchup at Florida State on November 2nd. And Carolina has another open date before its home game against Wake Forest. And they close the season on back-to-back weekends at Boston College and then host NC State. So, AJ, we were talking a little bit off camera. You know what? I'll save our overall reactions to it for a little bit later. I was going to do that, but let's save it. Let's run through the non-conference schedule and how we kind of
I'm ready to fire off right now.
It's like I know it's easy to do, right? We were talking about it off camera. Yeah. We were just
I have the cannon lit, and that thing is going, man.
I'm sure a lot of Carolina fans have their own opinions on it as well. But AJ, let's start with that.
I put the schedule out right away on Twitter, and
the
reaction was entertaining. It still is because my phone's still lighting up with that stuff.
We'll chat about that later, too, because I have some
You put it over there. Lighten up so much. I didn't want it to be a visual distraction here in the video.
I believe it, man. Twitter's always on fire with stuff like this. But start with that non-conference schedule at Minnesota, Charlotte, NC Central, and James Madison. You know, toughest game in there is probably at Minnesota to open the season. But when you look at it, I think it's a relatively favorable start for North Carolina and a lot of opportunities, particularly with those 3 home games in a row, to put some wins on the board early in the year.
Well, starting at Minnesota, that's going to be a challenging game. Gophers had a little bit of a down year this past season, finished last in their division in the Big Ten West. 3-6, I think, in league play, 6-7. They actually got to a bowl game at 5-7 to fill the slot because that rule was tweaked, and they won and got to 6-7. So they're coming off a bowl win. If I'm sure that gives them a little bit of good vibe.
But
I think, look, North Carolina going on the road to take on a Big Ten team isn't exactly a gimme. The last time they went on the road against a Big Ten team was Illinois in 2016. They spanked them. That was the Lovie-Smith era at Illinois. And then in 2003, they went to Wisconsin, were competitive and lost. In 99, they won at Indiana. Otherwise, they hadn't played a Big Ten team since the 70s on the road.
Yeah.
In true road game. I'm not including Rutgers and Maryland because they're all their games, those places. Rutgers was in the Big East. And then Maryland, of course, was and Rutgers was in the Big East and Big East like all those times. And Maryland was obviously ACC. So I think it's a cool opening. I'm glad it's a Thursday. It means I get to watch all those games that first Saturday. I'll be home for that. I think it's neat about the schedule. They have 3 open Saturdays. I'll get into one of them later about where I'll be traveling, but I'll be happy traveling back from somewhere. So the schedule worked out there. Look, this is a very doable schedule. They should be 4-0. Shouldn't have any trouble with Charlotte or Central. Shouldn't have any trouble with James Madison. Kirk Sidnetti went to Indiana, took a bunch of players with him. JMU has been really, really fortunate that it has had success no matter who the coach has been. Their coaches have gone off other places, and the program keeps winning because it's got a great football culture. It's got great facilities, got a great stadium, a great fan base. They are in need and seriously desire winning football. But we'll see what they're like. I think North Carolina in year 6 under Mac Brown should have no trouble with James Madison at home, especially since that'll be the 4th game. So the Tar Heels will know a lot about themselves by the time JMU comes in, and then they go to Duke the next week. So they should go 4-0 outside the league, and they could go 4-0 and it register absolutely nothing on the national or even regional or local radar because it's not a tough schedule.
Mhm.
This past year, the schedule was supposed to be really, really tough. It turned out that South Carolina stunk. Minnesota stunk. App State was okay, but it still a Sun Belt team, and Carolina had to go to OT to beat them. So this is going to be another schedule where if Carolina's looking to carve out a little bit of national recognition, it's not going to get it. And let's be honest, before I go any further, after the last few years, it doesn't matter what Carolina starts out. No one's going to believe. No one's going to believe until the Tar Heels show it this time. You go 6-0 and fall on your you-know-what. You go 9-1 and fall on your you-know-what. No one's going to fall for that this year. So this will be a good way for them to go 4-0 without anybody getting excited, because no one will be at that, given the last 2 years and given this schedule. And by the way, I don't, as much as I think it's cool they're playing Central, and I know it helps Central and all that, but that's not North Carolina's purpose for fielding a football program, to help Central.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should play FCS teams. They should, in that game, they should be playing someone from the Mountain West or the MAC.
Mm-hmm.
Bring in Toledo, bring in Colorado State, be much, much better schedule, much more interesting, and I think better for the team.
No, I completely agree with that, man. Some of these games are just, not the most entertaining. We've talked about links about that. It's just a waste of time.
You get 12 games to play, and you're going to use one of them in virtually an exhibition game. I think it's ridiculous. Now that we have a 12-team playoff, we need as much intel as possible about these teams and about these leagues and about who everybody's playing. And when you have a throwaway game against an FCS team, to me, that's wasting an opportunity for intel. Yeah. I don't like it. I think it should be done away with. If you're going to have a legitimate competition for a 12-team playoff race, you should penalize teams for playing those games. If you play a Division II team, it doesn't, the NCAA or the committee, they don't see that on your record. So if you go out to the Maui Invitational, for example, and you play Chaminade, and you win that tournament, you open with Chaminade, the selection committee will see you going 2-0 out there, not 3-0. The Division II games don't count. So FCS games shouldn't count either. If you want to play them in a scrimmage in the middle of August, or play them as a spring game. But you should not play them in the regular season. I say that more now than ever before because of the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
Because you have to have as much intel as possible.
Agreed. No, I couldn't agree more.
For the Tar Heels, the Tar Heels will take it because they need wins. Period. So they should go 4-0, Jacob.
Yeah. No, I think you won't be in the minority with that opinion for sure. As we dive into ACC play, let's split these up with the first 4 ACC games. Starts off like I listed: at Duke, Pittsburgh at home, Georgia Tech at home, and then a trip to UVA again. I'm looking at that, and I'm even contemplating in my head what the toughest matchup would technically be. I know at Duke's interesting. Manny Diaz coming in as a new coach is always a tricky game because of the rivalry. You'd expect them, based on the last few years, to still be pretty good next season, but no guarantees on that. Pittsburgh coming off a really down year for them. Georgia Tech, it's Carolina's bogey team. Say what you want. It is. They can't beat them for whatever reason, but that is at home. So, you'd think Carolina have a good opportunity.
Secret recipe now, though.
Yeah. You're right. Jeff Collins coming in. Yeah, Jeff Collins coming in. Good point. And then a trip to UVA, who's coming off I know Carolina beat them. I mean, Virginia beat Carolina at home. Carolina fans don't want to relive that, but it's coming off a really bad year again in Charlottesville. So thoughts on those first 4 ACC matchups?
At Duke, Pitt at home, Georgia Tech at home, and at Virginia. Yeah, they should go 4-0. They should win those 4. In year 6 of Mac Brown, they should win those 4. Pitt is totally restructuring. Apparently, Pat Narduzzi decided that they're going to try to move the ball on offense. So they're making a push to try to do that. They are what they are. I mean, they can be problematic for the Tar Heels, but Carolina is going to have more skill and should win that game. Should beat Georgia. At some point, they're going to beat the Yellow Jackets, right?
Got to, right?
Might as well end that. Like I said, the Jeff Collins secret sauce, although the roster's probably almost totally gone from when he was there because the way things changed now.
Fair point.
And I know that UVA won in Chapel Hill last year, and I credit UVA for doing that. And the Mike Collins story that week was great. It was cool to see him score in that game, given what he went through. But that was totally shame on Carolina. That was a shame on UNC performance. So if the Tar Heels are ready to play, they should go up and beat UVA. It's not like UVA's made a ton of progress under the current regime right now. So there'll be a warm seat or maybe even a hot seat by that point when the Tar Heels go up there. So I don't see if you put everything on the table. They should not lose any of the non-conference games. They shouldn't lose at Duke. I know that Duke was pretty good last year, but Elko's gone. Manny Diaz teams never carried the kind of personality that Elko's two teams did. Sure. So it'll be a change at Duke. I don't think Duke's going to be as good. They got to figure out quarterbacks. There's a lot of stuff to do. I know they got that kid, I think, transferred from Texas, but we'll see when the season comes, right? Shouldn't be an issue with Pitt. They should take care of Pitt at home. They should finally beat Georgia Tech. And if you're going to be a quality program and you're going to talk about being a quality program and talk about all the things that you've done that hadn't been done for a while, you cannot lose to UVA back-to-back years, especially the current UVA. So they should be 8-0. Crazy as it sounds, I know the last thing, it's like Carolina fans almost don't want to hear that. They're terrified at being 8-0 because then they're gonna start believing, and then they're terrified to have that total letdown.
I had someone
but
on
they should
Twitter.
be 8-0. God, you know what? I hate doing this because there's no homer crap here, but the schedule is dog crap up to that point. And they should be 8-0.
No,
Pitt will be better because they should be better, but man, and I like what Brent Key's doing a lot. Georgia Tech might be pretty good. They got to finish strong. I think it's going to be a tough game, but Carolina's at home in year 6 of Mac Brown with all the things that were done, the changes that were made with the staff. They should beat Georgia Tech at home. They should be 8-0, Jacob.
I couldn't agree more. I had a Carolina fan on Twitter. I think he was serious too, saying best case scenario is 4-8.
Yeah, I saw 7-5, and I thought, well, that guy hit the bottle early tonight.
I was like 4-8.
Hopefully, if they're 7-5 with this schedule, then the negative Nancy's will have their day.
Yeah, and they'll have a pretty good right too. Yeah,
if they're 7-5 with this schedule, then there's something wrong. Now, I'm not a guy that says things like that very often, but this is not a very challenging schedule. Of course, there may be some surprise teams that are really, really good that we don't realize. It's possible Georgia Tech's awesome. Yeah, it's possible Pitt completely flips it around and the Panthers are back to being ACC contenders like they were for a while. But right now, when I look at the way things are at this moment here in the middle of January, late January, they should be 8-0. And then you read off the last 4 here and they should win more than 8. The last part of the schedule's the toughest part, again, like last year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll run through the last 4 games of the season because I do agree with you. It's especially looking at this schedule like we've talked about. If you break it up into kind of 12 games, 4, 4, and 4, this is definitely the toughest 4-game stretch of the season for the Tar Heels. Starts on November 22nd, like I mentioned, at Florida State. That's always going to be a tough game. They're coming off a great year. Wake Forest at home, at Boston College, and then NC State. Bogey team for Carolina over the last few years in particular. They just cannot seem to beat the Wolfpack at home to wrap up the year on November 30th. So like you said, that to me is the toughest stretch. There's some very losable games in there. I think if you're looking at this schedule, probably going to look at that FSU game and say, that's a tough one. Kind of similar to how Carolina fans, in my opinion, at least looked at the Clemson game on the road last year when the schedule came out. Like, that might be an automatic loss. It remains to be seen how good Florida State is this year. But again, you'd expect them to have another really good year. But Wake Forest and at BC, winnable games there, I think. But again, a trip to Boston College is always tough. Carolina struggled with Wake Forest in the past. What kind of team are they going to be after a relatively poor year to their standards last year? And then, like I mentioned, NC State to end the year. So what's your thoughts on the toughest stretch of the season for North Carolina here?
Well, that one is. And, when Carolina went to Clemson, there was a lot of optimism, and Tar Heels were 8-2. Clemson was 6-4. And a lot of people thought, hey, they close strong. Drake go down there and have a big game. And Clemson just smacked them at the line of scrimmage. And then, of course, NC State happened. So if they're 8, of course, that doesn't mean they will. If they're 8-0, they go to Tallahassee and they get rocked down there. That's a here we go again game. And then they have an open date afterwards. So that crap's going to linger. It's going to stick around and hover for a while. That's good. That would be one of the great psychological challenges that Mac would have since his return. Of course, we have no clue what's going to happen, but the schedule came out, so we're looking ahead at possibilities. So that would be one of those moments in time games. The 80 team that went to Oklahoma 7-0, and they were number 3 in the country, and it's 7 7 at the half or something like that. And they get blitzkrieged in the second half, 41-7. There are moments in time in Carolina football history where they have those kinds of games and they always fall short, always all short. So this could set up for another one of those games. And honestly, we may not know a ton about the Tar Heels until they go there because of their schedule. We don't know what that schedule, how good those teams are going to be or how bad they're going to be. So it's very possible 8-0 going to Tallahassee. There's, soft optimism and fear of the same thing happening again would be there. That would be the story. That's all we talk about and write about that week. Every damn podcast, every radio show, every article, the press conferences, they probably won't even give us the players. Like, they'll give us Max Johnson because he knows nothing about that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because imagine asking Kamen, well, it happened the last couple of years. I can tell you right now what Kamen's going to say. I'm going to go ahead and transcribe right now when we finish this podcast what Kamen's going to say, and I'm going to get my story ready for mid-November next year when they go to Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then going to BC, then they have the open date, and then they're home against Wake. Wake finished the bottom of the league this year. I don't know. Clawson's a really good coach. Wake's been a dangerous team, but Carolina's been able to take care of them at home anyway. At BC could be a tough game. The time of year, it's going to be cold, going to be nasty, it could be sleet coming at you this way.
That's a good point.
Who knows what the weather will be like, and who knows where Hafley's program. This is a big year for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to win 7 or 8 at least. I think he probably got to win 8 this year for them to continue on that train. So by the time they go up there, we'll know what kind of season BC's having. So whatever kind of season they're having will determine how tough that game is heading in. It could be a pretty tough one, or it could be one of those sleeper type games. Like NC State has a couple times lost to some bad BC teams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It could be one of those games that you got State next the following week and Carolina's sitting there, 10-1 or whatever, 9-1 and feeling pretty good about itself. And they go up to BC and just lay an egg. Yeah. It's windy. It's cold. There's 28,000 people in the stadium covered by blankets. There's about 600 Carolina fans. They don't bring the band. And they get beat like 28-20. That's the kind of stuff that's happened also before in this program. And that's the kind of scary stuff if you're a Carolina fan, how you might envision a game like that. Or it's nice weather. They go up there and
nice
take care of business.
Yeah, it could be.
I do think it's a game. I do think it's a game right now they should win. So now that we're 11 in, they should win 10 of those first 11 right now on January 24th, looking at this roster. It being year 6, and that's part of a key component to what I'm saying here. Year 6 of Mac Part 2 with the coaching staff that he's got in place now, with the kind of experience he's got, with the amount of money the school's spending on that defensive staff. You probably got to be 10-1 just because of the schedule and because you should be pretty decent. And that sets up that last game against NC State. And, at some point, Carolina's going to get back on the train against them, right?
I mean, you would
State
think
should
so,
be really
right?
good.
Yeah.
I've seen State in someone's CFP for next year.
A lot of people saying they're kind of winning the transfer portal so far this offseason, which, I mean, you look at who they've got, which I can disagree with it, but.
I think that State's figured some stuff out, and Dave Doran has a culture in place. There's no doubt about it. Kids know what they're getting into when they go there. There's probably not a lot of surprises. I don't think there's oversold expectations either. We're hand in the dirt guys, and we carry lunch pails everywhere we go and all that kind of junk. But it works. And it works. Mm-hmm. It's an ag school. It works at an ag school. It's good. It suits the culture of the fan base, and that's why it works. So every school's got its own unique culture, and often you need to have, in order to be successful, you kind of got to have a coach that fits the culture a little bit, usually, and the culture of the school and the culture of the program. And Doran has found a way to do that. Now, some State fans love to dump on him because of his record against Power 5 teams, especially non-conference Power 5 teams, but whatever. I think that program's getting better. And you see what they're doing in the NIL. They launched that NIL campaign similar to what Carolina's done, and it's working for them. So right now, heading in, I think that would be a very tough game for Carolina to win. Carolina doesn't have Sam or Drake. And it wasn't like Sam or Drake Sam beat him. Drake didn't beat him.
No.
And I think Drake's the best quarterback the school's ever had, and he didn't beat State.
Mm-hmm.
So are you going to go say right now that Max Johnson will? I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say 10-2. I think it's hard to be objective and say that North Carolina wins that game right now. But of course, the game's going to be played in 10 months. So we still got some time.
Yeah,
before that happens,
especially being the last game of the season, who knows what state it's going to happen with State? Who the heck knows what's going to happen with North Carolina? But yeah, I mean, based on recent history, no, I'm not picking Carolina to win that one right now, especially as someone who's witnessed some of those games over the last 3 years, been on the field actually for the last 3 games against NC State. I mean, there's just been some brutal collapses at the end of games and just some tough losses going back to last year. So it's hard to sit here and say, yeah, Carolina will win that game and finish 11-1. I mean, it's hard to.
Well, that puts it at 10-2, right? Lose Tallahassee,
that's true.
Lose to State, 10-2. It'll be a great year for North Carolina. 10-2 doesn't happen very much. Mac will sell the what out of it, as he should.
Yeah, for sure.
And then they have a chance. Then they have a chance playing decent bowl game. They won't be CFP contenders, the 12-team playoff contenders. But if they beat State and they're 11-1, they would be.
Yeah.
Especially if that happens, they would probably play in the ACC championship game. So. But I ain't going there right now.
No, absolutely
that's
not.
Getting way ahead of. That's getting way ahead of everything. So, as it stands, the schedule's not that great. The program needs a year where they don't have a great schedule. It kind of comes at a good time. They need a little bit of a reboost here, a little bit of rejuice. And look, it's all about wins in the end. It's not like State fans will hate me saying this, and I don't care, but. State had some decent records by not playing a whole lot outside the league over time. And you can do that. Kansas State built his program under Bill Snyder, playing a bunch of patsies outside the league and going 500 in the Big 12. Then they started winning some games. And next thing you know, they're 10-2 and everybody's thrilled. So that's probably not a bad recipe for 2024 for Carolina football, given where the program is right now and the needs for Mac Brown to get this thing moving a little bit more. And for a fan base that, even though there's been success at Chapel Hill under Mac, they're not happy about things. So this might work out really well for everybody.
I agree. That was one of the first things I thought about when I saw the schedule, was looking at how the last couple seasons ended. A lot of new faces in the program now, including a new quarterback, at the helm. You look at this schedule and you're like, okay, this is an opportunity to do something, an opportunity where Carolina should have a good year, when, like we've talked about a lot in this schedule. But AJ, real quickly too, you mentioned the open dates earlier. Let's talk about them real quick before we wrap this one up. Obviously you talked about Carolina not having games on 3 Saturdays of this year. Obviously starts that first game with playing that on a Thursday night at Minnesota. Then the first open week's October 19th between Georgia Tech and at UVA. And then the other one's November 9th after the Florida State game and ahead of the Wake Forest game. So in particular, October 19th, bye week, November 9th, bye week. I mean, those are bye weeks in relatively quick successions in the kind of meaty part of the year where you've got a lot of guys banged up. You've got some guys that are injured because you're by that point in, 6+ games into the season. So I think when you look at the open dates that Carolina has here, I think they fall at a good time, although it, I know you might have a conflict in there with basketball. Can talk to us a little bit about that as well.
Well, it also, they go 35 days in between home games because they have home game, open date, 2 road games, open date.
Yep.
So they go 5 weeks without playing at home. I'm a fan of 2 bye weeks because I like to have my college football Saturday.
Yeah,
I just sit on my fat butt and watch football from noon until 1 a.m. whenever a West Coast game's over. So it's cool for me. And they're going to have 3 Saturdays like that because the first weekend they play on a Thursday. So that everybody will, we'll be able to watch games on that Saturday. What I'm relieved, I know nobody cares about this, but I'm relieved. And another one of my buddies in the media works for a rival site who travels everywhere like I do. We talked last week or so about how Carolina's basketball team plays at Kansas on Friday, November 8th next year. And we were talking about, like, holy crap, where are they going to play in football? Because this was after we knew that the schedule was coming out. Where are they going to play in football the next day? How are we going to be able to make it from Lawrence? You got to fly to Kansas City. So you got to drive back got to file your post-game work, drive back to Kansas City, somehow get back to wherever the Tar Heels will be playing the next day in football and cover it. And they have an open date. So when I saw that, I yelled to my wife. I said, they have an open date, blah, 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 blah. She had no earthly idea what I was talking about. She didn't know the significance of it all. So a little while later, when I started to record this podcast, I was in there and I said, it's candy. Did you hear what I said? She goes, I don't know.
She
It's
said, "I don't
Kansas.
care."
Oh, yeah, they're good. Yeah, they're good. It's Allen Fieldhouse. It's anyway. So
She's not wrong. They are good.
yeah, I know. So I've been in Allen Fieldhouse once before, but I've not covered a game there.
Yeah. A couple years ago.
That's going to be a treat. That's going to be huge. And I think it's cool because that's a good weekend. Just focus on that. So that'll really kind of bring that game out even more. And who knows? Maybe if the Jayhawks are home at football the next day, I'll go see them.
Yeah, man. I wouldn't blame you.
Or just fly home early and watch the night games here. But so the 2 open dates I think are great. Although the coaches don't really like them, especially you get in a roll. Mm-hmm. And what is that? 7 games before an open date?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Yes, 7 games.
Okay. Then you open date. Then you play 2 on the road. Open date. Yeah. I don't think the coaches like that because you want to get in routine. Players would rather stay in routine. They really would. And wow, that'll be interesting. That'll be really interesting. I don't recall. They had 2 open dates 2 years ago because they played on week 0 against Florida A&M. Mm-hmm. So they had 2 open dates then. It was not a 2 open date year. It was a 13-week season. This year it's a 14-week season, not including week 0. So that's why there's 2 open dates in there. But I'm looking forward to having college football Saturdays. The one we had this year that was an open date. I had to go back to Virginia for my high school stuff, my high school reunion. So I didn't have a college football Saturday this past year. And most of the games Carolina played were at night. So I just didn't watch as much football as I usually would. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So personally, you asked me and I'm answering you. Personally, I'm excited.
No, you're not the only one, man. Nothing better than a college football set. Maybe we have some more noon kickoffs. Fans aren't going to want to hear that, but come on, give us some more noon kickoffs this year, man.
I was kind of secretly hoping to see a Friday night in there when it's done. Because I knew Minnesota was Thursday, but a Thursday at where they got to go. A Thursday at UVA would be great. That'd be perfect.
Be something close proximity. Drive up there.
Drive back the next day. Have a good Friday. Have a good Friday there at home and putting together all the postscript stuff, and then Saturday, just sitting back watching games.
Hey, you know what would be even better though? A Thursday at Duke. I think that would probably be optimal. Talk about.
Well, they've had a couple of those.
That's what I'm saying. They need to bring those back, man.
They had one the Chrome helmet game when they routed them. They had one when Trubisky threw an interception at the end. It was in 16. 16. That was, and that game was the night before Carolina's championship basketball season opened. The 2016-17 basketball season. They played at Tulane the next night. Right. So I went home, slept 2 hours, got up and flew to New Orleans and then covered the game that night.
God, that's brutal right there. That's brutal.
That was a funny story. I could tell it now because it's far enough gone. I know I'm totally going off the rails again here, but Mike Dunleavy Sr. was the coach at Tulane at the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, he'd known Roy for God knows how many years. Obviously, they go way back, I'm sure. So we're back in the bowels of the arena after the game or something like that. And Roy's walking by him. I think Roy's presser's over. And I'm following Roy and Kirsch. We're going to the Carolina locker room, do interviews and stuff. And Dunleavy, where'd you go for dinner? That's the first thing he said to him. Where'd you go for dinner? That was one of those moments like that's old boy basketball. Those are old boy basketball guys that have been around, known each other for years. And how many awesome restaurants have these dudes gone to together? Oh, so where'd you go for dinner? And he was so excited. Where'd you go for dinner? I'll never forget that. One of those things that stands out.
That's a good story right there. First thing he asked him, nothing more, nothing less.
But this is a football podcast, so I digress.
It's all right, man. It wouldn't be right if we didn't derail one of these. I mean, it's just what comes with these podcasts nowadays. So I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. I think we've run through everything we need to run through.
Sounds good. I got to get my steps.
Yeah.
I'm recording basketball and I got to get my steps, come back and watch games. So
heck yeah, man. You're not the only one. I need to go eat some dinner. I'm starving over here. So we'll run. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. Another episode of the THI podcast. Let's do this. Like the video below if you agree with us. You think it's a favorable schedule and that Carolina should, looking at this, I think it's safe today that when you look at it, at least right now, like you've said a couple of times in this pod, right now on January 24th, I think Carolina should be winning 10 or more games with this one. It remains to be seen what happens, but go ahead and like the video below if you agree with us. Go ahead and share as well, subscribe, and hit that notification bell too. See y'all next time. Thanks.
Thanks.